Hey there, Scapers, and a warm welcome to our first and technically now second, because we kind of flipped them, RuneScape live stream of the week. It's nice to see you. Thanks for bearing with us while we made a few changes to make sure we could have some great faces with us. And speaking of great faces, today we've gathered up a bunch of your questions and some knowledge-laden JMods to talk about a whole host of topics you've raised. You gave us a lot. This is a lot of questions, so we're going to get right into it. So joining me to answer, to bring you Answer Mageddon are Mods Osborne.
Answer again. Hello, how are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. It's nice to have you here. It's nice to have another general Q&A as well.
Yeah, it does feel like a while. Yeah, it's good.
It has been a while. And also, speaking of people who haven't been on for a while, Mod Pie, everybody.
You're right.
So, I mean, you being here means, yeah, we got a lot of combat questions, right? Like a lot. A lot.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll come on. This is how you invoke Pie.
Or invoke, it's the summoning ritual. Ask enough combat questions.
Ask lots of combat questions.
Well, just before we get into it, a couple of things just want to quickly say. We're going to make this super quick. We've just announced the news that the beach is back this Monday, and yes, that also includes the dungeoneering hole. I don't know how to say it any other way really, except I know a lot of you will be excited about that. Grab all the details on the beach at runescape.com right now, and look out for that on Monday. Also, you'll want to relax while you can too, because in case you missed the little kind of hints we gave you in yesterday's stream, if you joined us for that, the first part of the Elder God Wars dungeon experience is upon us this month, and you're going to hear more about it next week. And yes, we're even going to have a bit of a primer. It's not going to drop any details, but it's going to give some indications on some of the things you might need if you want to get the most out of your experience when the content drops. So stand by for news and keep an eye out for that primer on Friday. Right. Onto that, we're going to get straight into the questions. There's tons to get through. We're going to get through as many as we can. We do have a hard stop today because of people's schedules as well a little later in the show, so I'm going to try and fit as many as we can. First, I'm going to come to, we've been speaking about Elder God Wars, so I'm going to go to a couple of Elder God Wars related questions first. So, Mr. Osborne, firstly, we're talking about this idea of Elder God Wars and there being parts. What's the reasoning behind this approach that we're taking with the Elder God Wars dungeon?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people know their God Wars dungeons. They were probably around for it in the past. I remember God Wars 1, God Wars 2, and how it was just this kind of avalanche of bosses in one go. So you're going to have inevitable questions, like we're going to have God Wars dungeon in, let's say, multiple parts. That's going to raise question marks, but there's quite a few reasons for why it makes a lot of sense to us. One of them is we're aiming to hit like multiple targets with this. We don't want to just hit the kind of massable, rinseable bosses with every single one kind of corner of the God Wars dungeon. Like, we could do that, we could have done that, but what we find is people just find the one they like. That's the meta, right? You jump into God Wars dungeon, you find the one you like, and then you keep hitting it. And that's almost a waste. That's kind of the conclusion we came to. What if you could do lots of things for lots of different people? You could probably think of multiple kinds of content that the bosses could be that aren't just massable multi-way bosses. So we've gone in that direction. And I know there's a lot of people who could say, well, why don't you just launch them on day one, like a normal God Wars dungeon? But because there's so many different things to do, different kinds of things to do, that's a massive, like, overblown cognitive load. Like, do you do this thing or that thing? It's not a case of, like, which one's going to be the most lucrative to me, which one makes the most sense to me. It's going to be 4 things competing for your attention. So that's number one. Number 2 is ambition, right? Like, we want to do something new, and that is about making God Wars Dungeon feel like this escalating experience. So it's not just about being whacked around the head by a massive update. It's about feeling that update change and shift over the course of weeks and months. Things escalate, and it feels more like a moment. Like we all talk about like strange power and how good that was. Like, I was there for the strange power. What about that multiplied by so many? We want that feeling, yeah, and it also allows us to drop in little updates in between, right? It's not always just about the big drops. There's actually some small stuff in between that can surprise as well. So we get to be really playful about it. All of these reasons, I'm hoping, will give you a good kind of grounding in why it had to be this way. I'm hoping it feels as good as I've just laid it out.
Yeah, I'm really excited for people to see the first part as well. Oh, sorry, Pi.
Knowing what's coming, it makes complete sense to me. and like
Yeah,
I'm
and
really
you'll be the
excited to
judges
see
as well.
how each part people enjoy, because it's pretty awesome.
And it's not like we're
Cool.
scrimping, right? We're not chopping it up into small pieces.
Yeah, like each
Sorry,
one is like the other ones. Having seen them in development, like there was definitely a team making X bosses all at the same time, and the focus was never laser focused on each one. Whereas this very much is like each thing being released is like has been given complete focus by the people making it. So each one feels like an update. If that's the best way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And just one more thing before we go into, because we've got a lot of questions to go to, and obviously we'll be talking about the Elder God Wars dungeons and the parts of that as we go. There's one other question here that I just want to touch on before we go into all the nitty gritty, which is, will we see more quests this year after the release of Elder God Wars Dungeon? Or more importantly, is the current storyline going to continue?
So yeah, I mean the current storyline in all likelihood will continue into next year. We've got we've got a lot to get through. We've got a lot of characters that we want to bring in, a lot that needs to be resolved. So we don't want to cram it into the year just for the sake of it. Equally, like there will be quest content that remains in the storyline. Absolutely, some of it will come this year. Not all of it will be Elder Gods. You probably noticed that we've done anniversary mini quest stuff, which is really cool, and that's going to continue. So we have got kind of a change of palette. It's not all Elder God Wars themed. And one of the things that I love about all of this is we're building to something completely new. Like when we started this whole storyline, we knew full well where we were going. Like we always wanted to like get on the train or know our destination kind of thing. And so if in the background of that question, because I know it's a player question, is, I'm getting a bit tired of gods and cosmic bodies and all this lot. We've got a different direction that we really want to go in. That's a bit of a left turn on that. So we've been building to it for a while, so we're really excited.
Oh, there's some really future hints. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to bounce. So we have a whole document full of your questions. I'm going to bounce between them because I want to balance the questions between Osborne and Pi. So I'm now going to the combat section, which is probably our biggest section that we have. We'll go to you. I'm sure most of these will be you, my Pi. But let's ask you the big grand question that you got, and you're like, oh god. Do you guys have a vision or goal of where combat wants to be with all the styles?
Yes. In terms of, so we've had a vision for quite a while. And one of our key focuses in recent years almost, is to provide the styles with more of a kind of gameplay feel to them. I've said it before, like old range and magic felt very similar. The initial release of EOC, we kind of focused on, okay, here are rotations and here are these different ability types, but you've kind of grown out of that. Like we don't need to do that. We can actually start ingraining some like personality in each of the styles, and that's kind of where we've come with for instance the ED abilities for melee, for instance, right? So Greater Barge, for instance, gave melee much more of a kind of a feel to it, and how it's like really bursty, and when you need that burst you can rely on the Greater Barge to layer all of that damage and deal the most amount of damage in a small amount of time, right? Then you've also got range, where you've got like the bolt procs, and then you've got things like ECB, and then you've got things which synergize with that. So you've got rapid fire, which gives you lots of little hits. You've got Greater Ricker, which gives you lots of little hits, which gives you all of these different, like each one rolls on your bolt procs, for instance. So you're incentivized to kind of put in lots of little hits and put DOTs on things, and that's kind of where we want to go. And it shouldn't be. We have a goal with Mage. I can't say too much with it, but let's just say the Eye of Pyron, I like Lord of the Rings things, is firmly focused on Mage at the moment, because it's very clear that that's the underperforming style, and I've wanted to improve Mage for a very long time. So yeah, like we do have a goal right now. Our goal is to make the gameplay a lot more interesting, and to almost put like a kind of meta gameplay on top of just performing your rotations and doing as much damage as possible.
And yeah, speaking of that and magic as well, we had another question here. Obviously, Senntisten, for those of you who may not know, introduced some new ancient spell rewards. And the question I have here is, now that the dust has had some time to settle and a couple of changes been made, how do you feel about the new ancient spells? Are they living up to what you intended?
Yeah, like as a team, we're super happy with how they're playing out in general. Like you're starting to see a little bit of that kind of like meta gameplay coming in, where you're like switching between the different like spells and getting these stacking buffs and applying them, and it's kind of affecting your gameplay. We're still looking into some things. Like we understand that like switching your autocast spell is really clunky at the moment, so that kind of gameplay isn't well supported. We're also looking at like the cost of the spells as well. So we're still looking at doing some changes, but in general, we're actually really happy with how they've come out and what they've added to Magic as a style.
Yeah, well, another question on that as well, relative to that is, what was the reasoning behind nerfing Smoke Cloud, which we did this week, per combat style when it goes against every other debuff in the game, according to this player's asking question? Are we likely to see other debuffs working per combat style in a similar fashion?
Yeah, so there's no hard and fast rule that a debuff should affect every style. Like our focus for Smoke specifically was we had two key aims. We had improved magic because it's underperforming, and we wanted it to be viable for like team gameplay. So someone in the team will bring this to the team, and it affects everyone. So we chose to when we looked at it, we chose to kind of put Mage more on a pedestal. So we had a bunch of decisions we could have made. So we could have made it like a self buff, but that wouldn't have worked with groups. We could have required you to have a magic weapon to make it more mage focused, but that's just clunky. We don't want to do that. Buffing it further with magic would then just cause us bigger problems further down the line when we do try and do more stuff with magic, and now we have to bring all this back in line, because doing things like increasing crit cap does a lot, because people are hitting that max that cap quite often. So in the end, we're kind of like, okay, we want mage to really shine, so we're going to have to bring down melee and range, but we still want them to get some benefit. We just want magic to be the one that really benefits from the spell itself. Does that make sense?
Awesome. Yeah, it does. It does. One more question on the new spells, because they're a hot topic. This person who gave me the question, by the way, sorry, we totally forgot to capture the usernames this time. I apologize to all of you who asked these great questions. Animate Dead is a great way to make tank armor useful. Are there upcoming plans to do more to make tank armor relevant?
To be honest, we're always looking at ways to make tank armor relevant, right? It's a really hard sell. Quite often it gets kind of written off as the accessible armor. It's how you get into PVM, right? Because you can lower your damage. But in terms of like players really hard focusing on end game, it's really hard to sell tank armor. And we want people to want to take tank armor, but it's really difficult because more damage. Yeah, I'll take that one. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of end up with this kind of anti-synergy, because if you make tank armor too good, then you can have the inverse. It's like, oh well, this is I'm also not taking too much damage and I'm doing more damage. So we find that in general people go for the more damage, but no, we do want tank armor to be more viable, and we're always looking at ways to make it more.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more combat question, then we're going to bounce back to more generalist questions, and we'll come back to combat as well. I'm just trying to bounce things up. I think everyone in chat, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would like to talk about the Grimoire Pages. Obviously, we talked about these for a while. Finally came out recently, and we've seen different feedback on it. And one of those is that there's players that feel that the drop rates may not be good enough, essentially, and haven't gone low enough. What are your current thoughts on this?
Well, from what we've seen, they're correct. So our goal with this, our ultimate goal, was to basically bring down the usage cost of a grimoire. And the first thing we looked at was increasing the drop rates on Solak. However, when we looked at the amount of players killing Solak and the amount of pages that we needed to bring into the game, this didn't kind of align, right? So we went for something that was a lot more accessible, and we went for Slayer, and we know that the Lost Grove creatures are actually one of the most completed Slayer tasks in the game. So we're like, okay, well, so we'll put the pages on this. When we looked at this is one of the most completed Slayer tasks in the entire game. So our approach is basically we're going to be slowly modifying the drop rates until it's where we're at. So we're not done with it. However, when you think about supply and demand, you can slowly increase supply, and that's okay. But if you greatly increase supply and they're too much, and then you need to sink more out of the game, you have a different problem to solve. So the approach we're taking is, okay, we're going to slowly do it, slowly increase it, see how the game reacts. Slowly increase it, see how the game reacts, so we don't oversupply the game and we don't destroy the pages, because fixing that problem is much more difficult. So we do actually have time already signed off in the coming weeks for Mod Ramen to work on it further and to continue looking at it. But if the changes feel lackluster, that's because we're kind of baby stepping our way there. But we will get there in the end, and we're definitely not done with it.
Awesome. All right, we're going to bounce out of the combat-specific questions, go to more journalist ones just for a little bit. First question here: are developers satisfied with the results of the Divination update?
Oh, yeah, 90% yes. So I chatted to Mod Shogun about this. So we know full well, for example, that our data team got back to us and told us that Divination play had doubled post-launch, and that seems to be consistent as well, that's awesome. I mean, that's what you look for, and we've got to remember that this was quite a small injection into Divination as well. And one of the biggest things that we wanted to change was there are a lot of people at level 1 Divination, and you want to get them out of level 1. So that's great. More people are doing that too. I think why we're not like 100% satisfied yet is I think we're still having a look at whether or not it is a bit claustrophobic. Because we've pulled in the wisps, because there's a lot of people playing in a smaller space now. Just want to make sure that feels good. So that's something we might play around with a little bit. But generally, it's done everything we wanted it to. We're very happy.
Good. That's great to hear as well. Speaking of content releases, obviously we introduced the new Halloween event last year. We've had this new Easter event. This person obviously felt that I remember the whole context is the Halloween event was more engaging to them than the Easter one. Do you feel like this year's Halloween event will kind of be even more engaging still?
Yeah, I mean by nature almost, because one of the aims that we had for last year's Halloween was that we would, do something that a major competitor does quite regularly, which is create a hub and build on it year on year. There are good reasons to come back, and story stacks on it. This becomes this big festival atmosphere that we just grow and grow. So in that sense, yes, because we're going to continue the feeling of, the kind of mini quest work, new characters coming in, new rewards, that kind of thing, which is subtly different from Easter's kind of identity. But also you're getting all of the old Halloween stuff as well. So if you haven't played Halloween, obviously you can, it gets regurgitated out again, you can go and play that. So I think so, yeah. And when it comes to Easter next year, we're going to learn from that too. There's very clearly things that Easter didn't have that we can again stack on top of that. So if the kind of the backdrop to the question is Easter didn't grab you, then we've got every opportunity to make it grab you next year.
Awesome, cool. Is the concept of hero items dead, or will we see more of them in the future?
Oh man, we love hero items. I don't know if Pi shares this as well, but there's something joyful about the ultra rare, ultra useful item. I really like the narrative element to that as well, that it belongs to a character. And that's great, but by nature, they can't just rain down every week. That can't happen. It shouldn't happen. If you want to maintain the kind of the joy of getting one, that sort of thing. So very much kind of a continuing endeavour, but I mean, you could probably imagine some big updates that are coming this year that might suit it. So yeah, absolutely, it's happening.
I'm a big fan of hype moments. You know this.
Yeah, and that was one of teasers apparently.
There's a bingo card where apparently I say Super Bowl moments far too often, and that's one of them internally.
I've said the word awesome to every question that's been answered so far without even thinking about it, I think. So, you can scratch one for the bingo card for me too.
I'll get the t-shirt.
So, there's a question here. Importantly, I should probably add context on it because it's talking about Android, because on iOS this is very much not the case. But for obviously RS3 Mobile on Android currently sits at about 3.2 score. Are we satisfied with that at the moment? How are we currently feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're not satisfied with that. We want to be aiming much higher than that, and we're doing absolutely everything to push that higher. Like, we're already seeing a lot of kind of improvements to the mobile offering on Android, so that is creeping up. We're seeing it day by day. That is going up. But I mean, we obviously diagnose it, and we've, as a team, looked at why this might have happened. There are various reasons. Like, for example, we've seen a lot of reviews from territories that we're not localized in. So there was an expectation that RuneScape might have been in those languages, and it wasn't. Obviously, we had some kind of tech hiccups in the first week, which is part of it. But also, when we're looking at compatibility across the various Android devices, like we did a good job. We hit a lot of them, but there are still some compatibility issues with some of them. And if you're coming to RuneScape and your device, it wasn't quite working properly, of course you're going to give a low score. But it's trending upwards, and we're motivated to get it up because then we'll be reassured to market it more. We want to market RuneScape more than we are currently, RuneScape Mobile, and review scores are a big part of that.
Yeah, I actually want to add a couple of things as well from our side on kind of I guess you call us the more publishing side, where working with the marketing teams, etc. Is the journey of mobile isn't done, right? Like we're joking almost that we've released mobile. But the launch is still to come, and we have a lot of promotional stuff that we're working out these issues before we go do. So we expect to see even more players coming in the future. And if you've joined us for any of our mobile showcase streams, the journey of mobile is very much one that we're beginning, not one that we're ending. So obviously it's a tough start on Android. We'd love to see that score as high as it is on iOS, but it's very much something we're going to be continuing on. It's far from done. So if you are a mobile player and you're out there and enjoying it on mobile, know that there's no change to the focus and the plans we have to support that alongside everything else as well. Okay, I'm going to ask you this one because I think actually last time we were on a general Q&A, Mod Osborne, I asked you this, and I think this is a must follow up. No, you gave a great answer for it. But the Dagannoth Kings boss pet graphical rework, that one. What's the latest on that?
I am as bored of this as players are, most likely. I'm so sorry. So where it is, so Dagannoth boss pets were always in a space where they were going to have to fit in the cracks a little bit. If we put Dagannoth boss pets up against, a graphical rework of an established area or some of the content you're getting in the next month, it's always going to lose, and it should lose. So now it's got to fit in the cracks a little bit. But where it's at the moment, when I checked in on it today, is that it's awaiting chat heads. So that's the only thing that's remaining. We need to get chat head work done because every pet has a dialogue option. I almost want it not have dialogue. Can't they just be like, not have chat in some form so we can get these bad boys out? But once we've got that done and we've already kind of isolated a character artist who may well be doing that, then we'll get them out the door. Let's do it. Let's do it this year. Come on, people.
Is that a rallying cry for the team or for the community? I don't know. Quick question here I'm going to cover before we go to Mod Pie again and talk a bit more combat. There was a question on any news on player avatar rework. Yeah, we can't wait to do these streams with you again. There hasn't been any kind of major project updates to give that have warranted the level of a stream yet. So just bear with us. As soon as we have that kind of milestones ready to show more of it and get your feedback on it, we totally will. Just no date to announce today, but no, it's still very much on the radar and something that we want to get out in front of you at our next opportunity. So just stand by on that. All right, let's go back up. I'm going to scroll the many questions we have and go back up to the combat section here. So we're getting into some more nitty-gritty stuff now. This one I don't think will be nitty-gritty though, because I know it's a common topic in the community, one we see all the time. Have we had any change in our thoughts since we last talked about this on death costs? Well, where's our current thinking with that?
Oh, you see,
the biggest question in RuneScape, as far as I'm concerned.
My thoughts haven't changed. I've sent some things at you, Mod Osborne. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Unleash on this. Talking.
But yeah, for PVMers, I'd like to look at the scaling, especially at the top end, because it was made at a time when certain levels of death costs were seen as a cap that are no longer a cap because of the prices of items. So I'd like to see it addressed. But I have pitch stuff.
Yeah. And it hits the extremes, right, Pi? Like the top end players don't want to bring the best items because they get disproportional cost to it, and at the lower end, you just put off. And that hurts.
Yeah,
It hurts
exactly.
us.
So who actually wins? Yeah. So yeah, and it definitely hurts us as combat devs because we want people to want to take the best gear. We want people to want the best gear because that means that they get involved in the content that we're making, and we want more people doing PVM. So from a combat developer's perspective, yeah, like this is very frustrating. But yeah, like I'd like to see it done, but obviously it fits into the big picture, right? So yeah.
Cool. Are we considering buffing or changing Seren Spells?
It's in the list because obviously they're underutilized for us to look at. Mod Sponge is doing some awesome work at the moment, picking up what would normally be on my pie list and looking at stuff. And I'm pretty sure this will be on his list as well. He's been doing some awesome work. I can't say obviously what's coming because we don't know when it's getting released, but yeah, he's
such a great addition to the team.
Yeah, Mod Sponge is incredible to work with as well. Will hydrix tips drops be reworked in brackets in this place increased so that they are consistent with ammo usage?
So we actually have this as a point in our next Combat Council meeting to readdress this, which will be this Friday actually. But we are aware of the issue. The issue is when Onyx as well, bolt tips were made, they were just kind of seen as this, like, no one would throw away this level amount of money, right? So they were kind of given this really powerful ability based on the amount the ridiculous cost, which is a terrible way to be honest with you, but 2020 hindsight and all that jazz. So yeah, we do want to do stuff with them. It will probably be a combination of both how powerful it is and how many come into the game to make it a lot healthier. But yeah, we do want to look at it, and we haven't literally this Friday we're going to be chatting about it. So
Great. The players asked, can we get the ability to change spell left-click options on the action bar? I'd like to be able to switch between Sanjuanate, the most crazily difficult to announce spell name ever, thank you very much, especially because your brain looks at Extinguish every time, and Inside Fear with keybinds. Currently have to right-click and select autocast.
Yeah, I think I touched on this earlier. We're looking at better ways to support this. The action bar having a toggleable click is something that is just like a wider question of something that would be really, really cool to have. I think we've had prototypes of this internally before, but it's a non-simple issue. But we definitely want a much better way of switching autocast. It's something we're regularly talking about.
I know there's a few mods who feel very passionately on this one. With this one, any news on set effects for Elite, Tectonic, and Serenic?
This changes depending on the mod that I speak to, which is quite annoying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like I think there is an appetite for it, but we're not going at it with gusto. But it's definitely off the list. It's the best way I can put it.
Right, cool. I'm going to the next one. What are your feelings on this player? Feels like there's been a level of power creep in the game recently. What are your feelings on the current level of power within the game?
So yeah, the power has been getting more powerful, and comparatively between previous years, much more powerful. I think I've spoken on this at previous RuneFest as well. I felt that the player was too powerful and the NPCs weren't powerful enough, and we tried to buff NPCs, and it was on the whole quite negatively received because, funny enough, when you make the game harder, people don't enjoy it, right? And I think we've got to a point where this is just kind of limiting us from giving you guys cool things. And from what I've seen, it's not unmanageable, and people still want the power. The biggest problem here is people don't want the power. But I think actually we've empowered players to get more creative, and we've been able to give you guys much cooler tool sets by kind of removing this restriction. Obviously, there are limits to that as well, but I think actually on the whole it's been a positive thing for the game, with the current level of power creep, and I feel that it's kind of inhibited us where previously we were a bit more conservative and a bit more reserved. But yeah, like the player is powerful, but then as a player, you're the world guardian. You should feel empowered. You should trounce a bunch of NPCs, and as long as the game still provides you challenges, it's not too bad. You know what I mean?
Right, I'm going to bounce back to Mod Osborne more primarily. This is my job as a host. I have to make sure everyone's included in the conversation. I don't want anyone sitting in the corner quietly. So, first question: is there a plan to rework the way we access spells on mobile?
Yeah, right. So, like, spot on, because this is highlighting probably a number 1, maybe number 2 priority. Like, personally for me, in terms of the opening game, like, there are so many issues with how combat works for a new starting player. Understanding it, the legibility of it is a big problem. It doesn't feel satisfying in the early game. The unlocks don't work at a satisfying pace. There are so many non-industry standard or non-game standard ways that our early game combat works, that it becomes a real blocker to just enjoying RuneScape. And we all know that PVM, Slayer, bossing, these are all really satisfying things to do in RuneScape. Like, obviously tooting our own horn a little bit. It's really good. It's really satisfying. We want people to get there. So that needs to be ironed out. That needs to be sorted. So I guess the long way around is yes, absolutely. In a bigger bundle of things, we'll probably be addressing that as a kind of a larger scale initiative, because we have got 2 teams dedicated to kind of almost that post-mobile landscape, and they'll be looking at that.
Speaking
as
of
someone that's
sorry,
as someone that's had to teach players RuneScape combat, like literally write the tutorials. It's learning RuneScape's combat is a marathon. It's not really something that can be distilled down to a quick tutorial, and every attempt that we do still feels like information overload for the player. Like, if you play through the early game now, you'll find that we've obscured a heck of a lot from the player. We have addressed like a lot of the low level unlocks in that you've had the lesser ability. The player doesn't even see an ability bar for a long time, just to remove a lot of the complexity from a new player. So, like, yeah, there's a lot going on and a lot to look at, and yeah, this one's probably in the long list.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we're very fortunate to have is between the wiki community, the creators, like the community sub-communities out there, like the PVM Encyclopedia, like all those groups. There's so many resources. You just have to. That's the barrier, though, right? It's literally the having to go out and find it and absorb it and then go in. But once you do it, like, it's crazy. And obviously, for anyone who's joined us on the JVM journey, I've gone from killing barrows and thinking it was great, like it's 2006, to being able to take down solo necks. So it does work. It's just you just have to spend the time, and that's the difficult thing, right? You're asking people to go out of the game, which is really tough, right?
Yeah, that's my thing. Like, with my designer hat on, it's kind of, if people are going to external guides, as a designer, I failed, or we failed, and that's I absolutely would want to onboard people and get people, remove the fear of people in game. That's your ultimate aim, right? So there's lots of things that we can do that we've never tried before. Like, I'm a big fan of what if you stagger stuff? What if we cut out individual parts of the HUD for the new player and introduce them slowly? What if, there are more drastic things that we can do that we've never tried before, and that's a toolbox I'd love to pull out from the bottom of the bed and give a go. Who has a toolbox under their bed? That doesn't work. Sorry, analogy ruined.
Maybe if you're like trying to have weapons for burglars, maybe that would be a reason to have it there. I don't know.
Oh, that's it. Spanner in the face.
For the bed. Yeah, spanner in the face. There you go. Not condoned by JackX. So the legal team, they go for the rest easy tonight. Are there any plans for graphical updates for outdated locations?
Yeah, I mean, so the kind of player story on this is, wait a minute, we did Sears Village and then it all stopped, right? it feels like there's been a bit of a gap. The plan is, and hopefully we'll start seeing this kind of come out in the wash in terms of updates, is we're going to follow the player, the early game player, through the game. That makes a lot of sense to us. Like, we know the journey that we want to take them through, and that takes you to certain locations that are looking proper shoddy. Some locations that haven't been updated. I remember Varrock was updated pretty much the year I arrived.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, look, we got washing lines and they flap in the breeze. Exciting, that was like 15 years ago. So there's following that player is probably going to be the way that we achieve some form of consistency. Obviously, I know that there's going to be all these players who are looking at wait a minute, what about Ubiusk and various other kind of corners of the game that are awful, Slaglith, but we'll get there, and it is a huge initiative. We just got to choose the right plan, and this is the plan.
Also, a similar question to that. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. I'm always trying to find the next question while you're talking, and this is where it bites me, especially when my scroll wheel stops working. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, totally. This is
verbiage.
There was a question. I've lost it, so I'm going to bounce to whatever is next. Are we thinking of doing anything with War's Retreat when it comes to the extension we showed? It's back quite a while ago now. Is that still something on the cards, or is it kind of on the back burner?
It's one of those kind of updates that's in the back of our mind. Like we can whip it out if needed. Sorry, terrible phrasing, but we know that there's some things we could do with War's Retreat. That was a kind of achievement garden, was largely where it was at. The idea of recognizing your feats kind of visually, that's cool. That is cool. It's not necessarily what the game 100% needs. I'm a big fan personally. War's Retreat, onboarding people, giving me a reading list of bosses, setting me up for the first bosses and removing that fear. I'd love that for War's Retreat. There's a lot of grouping system stuff that needs to be sorted. Sorry, is the chat doing something that I can't see? I don't know.
The chat got me. I knew where that was going. The chat delivered. Sorry, continue.
So I guess what I'm saying is that War's Retreat stuff is in the back of our mind, and we've got other stuff we'd love to do in the area. I'd like to stop the camera flipping about. That's another job that we're very aware of.
Yeah, I saw when you teleport to Prifendas, and I could just call it Prifendas, and that's my old speak. Sorry, it's Prifdinus, isn't it? You can never say it.
Prifdinus.
Yeah, Prifdinus. I used to call it Prifendas before I joined Jagex. I always called it Prifendas and not Prifdinus.
And everyone knows
just
it,
my old.
Yeah,
well, at least I fixed it before chat.
Can't go wrong with
even saw it. So yeah, I fixed it.
There's a long old story actually. Oh, sorry. Can I just quickly go into the flip the camera?
Of course you can.
That's. I mean, a couple of them are tech bug work. Obviously, it needs a little bit more work to solve. But a couple of them, I think Prifdinus and PVM Hub, War's Retreat, you're on that list. It was because, from a graphical perspective, we wanted to make sure it was definitely not clipping through anything when you first arrived. So that was very much a kind of art-driven thing. But actually, chatted away to our, art directors and associate art directors, and I think we're going to back away from that decision. It's more important that there's a consistent camera. So it's good. We've got some kind of back away from it, and we'll probably put that on a Ninja backlog somewhere.
Brilliant. Another big topic especially for skillers. Are there any plans to up more level caps to 120?
We're always kind of. Man, it's like a pendulum, where we swing in terms of what we want skilling to be in the future. We've done a lot of kind of 120s. We did some skill reworks, and we've done new skill in the past 2-3 years. Skill reworks are massive for the game in terms of its longevity and just making it feel smooth. But they're massive. They're so big. New skills, like we've seen with archaeology, are really healthy. I think everybody was aware of the injection of players it brought. And it was just new things to progress with. It is good. It is healthy. We've got to be careful, can't just add a new skill every week. But we're aware of what they do. And that puts 120s in a wonky place. When we did 120 herblore and farming, I think there was a lot of sentiment, uproar, some things we weren't particularly happy with ourselves. A lot that was right, but a lot that needed to be done as well. And it's, I think we're kind of, it's certainly an option for the future, but I think our head's been turned more by the new skilling and more by the skill reworking at the moment. That's not to say we won't do well.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm going to touch on something here as well. We're going to go back to combat because I know we're really tight on time now because of people's schedules. So I'm just going to jump back to combat here. Are we like to see any imbues for the new Rex Matriarch's rings anytime soon? Would it be from raids, or would you be looking to do something else?
Well, the current place Rex Matriarch's rings are at is pretty bis, right? That's not to say we wouldn't imbue them. I think that's a perfectly viable thing to do. How we go about it, that sounds like something fun to do. I probably wouldn't stick it on Thala, let's be honest. I think it's a pretty good reward in terms of like something coming out. So I don't think we're actively looking at it, but I definitely wouldn't write it off. It's definitely a lever we can pull.
Any thoughts on special attack reworks, particularly for the staff of Sliske, but also for outmodded special attacks in general?
Yeah, we're currently looking at some. I believe Mods Sponge is looking at some as well. So again, that's on the list. It's pretty high up on the list for some of the special attacks. I'm not going to say any spoilers, but there are some definitely in our gaze, and we're always looking at making things more relevant, especially with EOF, like Essence of Finality.
I just love that people are talking about special attacks again. So good.
Yeah, Essence of Finality is like, yes, mate. So yeah, it's good.
On a similar note to that, would you consider giving Praisal Ones and Orbs, and I don't even know how to say Kopeshes, an interesting utility passive such as rune saving for parity with Blightbound crossbows?
This is similar to the set effects where, and the previous question really. It's like it's not something we're actively looking at, but it's definitely not something out. It sounds healthy. Definitely something we could do. But it's on a big old list. But yeah,
it's really about priorities and impact, right?
Yeah,
a lot of times.
Yeah. Our list is huge in the Combat Council. There's just only so much you can fit into a day.
Can we expect to see a combat week more often? They are pretty awesome.
I mean, I love PVM week. It's not really a question for me though, is it? It's a question for Mods Osborne. So please, Senpai.
Yeah, thanks, mate. So yeah, I mean, internally, like we loved it because it's like we don't. I'm trying to find the right way to put this. Like, we shouldn't always be hammering the double XP button. Like, it's really good to be having other ways of getting people excited about other parts of the game. Mm-hmm. So I loved it. But there is always this thing in the back of my mind that a lot of players love Combat Week because parts of combat aren't functioning as they should. So things like death rework and the death mechanics.
Yeah, so call out that elephant.
Yeah, exactly. So there's how you handle this from a very zoomed out perspective. But I think you can be absolutely certain that a Combat Week is coming. And we've got it scheduled. Just not going to tell you when yet.
Yeah, I mean, they're the reason I got into PVMing as well. That was my on-ramp.
Really?
I took on... Yeah, I think Rex Matriarch's release with the combat week there. I took on Rex Matriarchs because I was like, no risk to me, which is hilarious because my gear cost is not that much when I die, but I didn't know that. So, but yeah, it was that was when it got me playing. Okay, so I know I'm going to end this as your last question because I know it's a big one. So we talked a little bit about around Raksh's release about the codices and the new abilities, and specifically, obviously, discussion around greater Ricochet, and if we feel like it's overtuned or not overtuned, and if we're planning to do anything about it. Do you have any comments on that about where the team's head is? Is it still on our radar even, or is it something we're not looking at anymore?
It's very much been on our radar the whole time. I think we'd be ignorant to say that the abilities are not where we want them, and I'm not just going to talk about Grico because there's more abilities than just Grico, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're not where we want them. It's just the discussion has been quite long about what we want to do with them and where we want to go with them. But we most certainly haven't forgotten about them, and I reckon there will be some changes. I'm not going to go into any detail, but they are most definitely on our radar for like where they sit in the balancing.
Cool. I'm actually going to hit you with one more.
Actually, I'm going to elaborate on that in that. I'm not going to no spoilers, but what I will say is that recently when we've been making some like balancing changes, for instance, we've not really done a great job explaining why we've done them and why we've made these reasons. So one thing that came through very much internally in our internal discussions is that going forwards, when we do make a balancing change, we're going to be looking at doing a much better job of kind of explaining it inside the patch notes, and like where we want to go with these. So like I think the changes to the shadow spell recently could have really benefited from it. The changes to the Grimoire, for instance, if we were just up front and said, look, we're taking baby steps, like this is we added them to Slayer creatures to make them more accessible, to give you more pages, like there wouldn't be so much discussion needed because you'd understand where we're coming from. So going forwards, like any balancing changes like this, we will explain where we're coming from and why we're doing it better, or at least that's our
intention. It's frustrating because we've learned that before, right?
Yeah, it's very frustrating because we literally had to chat inside the combat camps going, I swear we've said this before. So yeah, you know what, just tell you what, Hooli, just hold us accountable to that, yeah? Just
I will do.
You nag us if the
you'll have
patch notes
the
aren't
evidence
good
here,
enough.
it's great. Well,
nag us.
So this is a very basic question, and obviously, as you know, we like to let players discover things, or at least talk about things at the right time. So I know there probably won't be detail here, but would you like to drop any teasers whatsoever for any kind of type rewards we may see from the Elder God Wars dungeon experience, or what rewards we definitely won't get? You can opt out of this, but I'm letting you decide if you want to tease.
These aren't my spoilers to give, but I'm going to be really mean and say I probably have already given some spoilers already in the of what I've told you. You probably will have a brief idea of what's coming your way, but I'm not going to ruin it. Like that's not my job.
Teasers. Okay, I know we have a hard stop here. Mods Osborne, is there anything before we go? Is there anything you want to tackle? Anything in the questions that you saw that you really want to address that maybe we didn't get to? We still have a lot more of these, and I think we should probably see to do another one very soon and not wait as long as we did between each one. Sorry about that, everybody. But before we go today, is there anything else you want to cover that you saw in there?
I'm having a scan, Mod Hooli. I'm having a look.
There's a lot.
I don't think so.
We've probably got through a third of your questions today, and I thought we'd get through at least half. So, yeah, we'll make sure to do one of these really soon again.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
nothing.
Sorry,
in
I haven't
there,
got anything. No. Let's keep them all. Let's make sure they don't get lost. I'm happy to go onto a Rubik kind of thread and start spamming out answers on there if need be. You know, whatever's needed.
It's a great idea. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry we had to do a bit of a hard stop on this one today, but thank you, Mods Osborne Morpai, for the many answers. Hopefully it answers some of your burning questions. I tried to prioritize the ones I saw the most. We will make sure we do one of these fairly soon, hopefully within the month. So just bear with us. We'll get something going. In terms of things coming up, don't forget, the beach. Go to runescape.com right now to get all the details on next week's beach release. On Friday, there will also be a primer that will give you some first indications of some of the skills or things you may want to have to be fully ready for our first part of the Elder God Wars dungeon release. And then next week is when we're going to start lifting the veil on what exactly we mean when we say the first part of the Elder God Wars release, dungeon release, and also what that might look like. So it's going to be a big week next week. We can't wait to tell you more about it. But until then, thank you so much for joining us. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
It's coming home!